This is a map of Jerusalem. Jerusalem is about 3,000 years old. It's a pilgrimage for Jews, Christians, and Muslims. About 1,000 years before Jesus was born, King David took the city of Jerusalem from the Jebusites. King Solomon, King David's son, built the first temple. The temple was burned by the Babylonians, and the people were taken into exile. When they returned, the temple was rebuilt. It was rebuilt and expanded again by King Herod by the time Jesus was born. On Sunday, Jesus sent two of his disciples into Jerusalem to borrow a donkey. Jesus rode the donkey in a route from the southern part of the city through the city and up to the temple. While he was riding the donkey, the people thought about the Messiah, and they thought that he might be the Messiah. So they broke palm tree leaves, and put them on the ground for Jesus to walk on the donkey. They also put their coats down, and they sang, "Hosanna, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." When Jesus and his disciples got to the temple, they entered the temple to pray. When they were done praying, they left the temple and they went to the Mount of Olives, where they slept. On Monday, they went back into the temple. They went into the courtyard to teach with the other rabbis who were there. After a day of teaching, they left the temple, went to the Mount of Olives, and slept. On Tuesday, they went into the temple, and when they got there, there were money changers and merchants. Jesus was very angry that they were buying and selling in the holy place. He turned over tables and he upset those that were selling birds and other animals for sacrifices. And he told the people, "Keep the temple a place of prayer." The guards began to watch Jesus and his disciples, and they noticed that the crowds that were following him were getting larger. At the end of the day, Jesus and his disciples went back to the Mount of Olives to sleep. The legend of the Mount of Olives is that the Messiah was to come down from heaven and lead the army of angels and drive away the Roman soldiers. That's what all the people were thinking about. And they noticed that every night they were going to the Mount of Olives. On Wednesday, Jesus and his disciples went back into the city. The guards noticed and were worried that the crowds were getting larger. At the end of the day, they went back to the Mount of Olives to sleep. Thursday, the guards had decided that that would be the day that they would take Jesus as a prisoner. But on Thursday, Jesus didn't go into Jerusalem. While they were at the Mount of Olives, the disciples asked, "What are we going to do for the Passover?" And Jesus told them to go into the city and find a man carrying a water jar, and he would tell them where to set up the Passover. That evening, Jesus and his disciples came into the city and went to the place where they would have their Last Supper. During this time, they had lots of food to eat. They shared bread and wine. And Jesus said that they would always remember him, especially in the bread and the wine, and that he would always be with them, especially in the bread and the wine. They didn't understand what Jesus was saying, but they didn't forget. Jesus told them that they needed to love each other and take care of one another. And he showed them what he meant about taking care of one another by washing their feet. Judas, in the meantime, hurried away into the darkness. Jesus and his disciples left the room that they had the Last Supper. They went back to the Mount of Olives. And when they got there, Jesus went into the garden to pray. His disciples slept. As Jesus was going back to the disciples, soldiers came and took Jesus after Judas showed them who Jesus was. So the soldiers took Jesus from the Mount of Olives to the high priest. The high priest was Caiaphas. Caiaphas asked Jesus questions, but Jesus wouldn't answer. He said, "Blasphemy," and he convicted Jesus of pretending to be God. Friday, the soldiers took Jesus to the governor, Pilate. "Are you the king of the Jews?" he asked Jesus, and all Jesus said was, "You have said so." Herod grew tired of him, or Pilate sent Jesus to Herod. Herod lives right here. This is Herod. And Herod tried to talk to him, but sent him back to Pilate. Pilate sent him to Herod. Herod sent him back to Pilate. Pilate told the people, it's a tradition to release a prisoner on Passover. Do you want Jesus or Barabbas? The people yelled, Barabbas! So the soldiers took Jesus to a place called Golgotha. And that is where they hung Jesus on the cross. The word Golgotha means place of the skull. After Jesus had died, the disciples took his body down from the cross and took him to the tomb that was given to him by Joseph of Arimathea. And a great stone was put in front of the tomb. Saturday, everything was quiet. On Sunday, women that were close to Jesus went to the tomb because they wanted to be close to him. Right here. When they got there, the stone had been rolled away. Somehow, he was still with them as he is with us today. I wonder, which part of the story do you find yourself in? Which part of the story is about you? Is there a part of the story that we could leave out and still have all of the story?